In recording period, the sentence morphed of a specification of a public print event in a magazine cliché and an irate policy stain. How did the period counterfeit news story develop, and which's following in the planet of misinformation? It was Medium, 2016, and BuzzFeed's print text editor, Craig Silverman, noted a fun flow of fully done-up stories how seemed to occur of one little East Europe city. We ended up conclusion a little group of news story websites all recorded in the identical city in Macedonia named Velis, Silverman recalls. The youthful human beings in Velis may or may not include had lot concern in us policy, but since of the cash to be done via Facebook advertisement, they requested their fictitious to journey wide on public print. The US President poll, and particularly Donald Trump card, was, or of year yet is, a really hot theme on public print. And so the Macedonians and some purveyors of forgery wrote stories in headlines such as Pope of Rome Francis Jolt Planet, endorses Donald Trump card for CEO, and FBI broker suspected in Hillary electronic mail leaks found corpse in obvious assassination suicide. They were fully erroneous. And therefore began the contemporary, and web-friendly, lifetime of the sentence counterfeit news story. Disinformation, rotation, put and deception include of year been about ever. But which Silverman and other unsecured was a distinctive wedding among public print algorithms, advertisement system, human beings produced to do material up to earn money several lightweight cash money and poll how seized a nationality and lot of the planet. But largest of the substance was more than conventional policy communicating, advertising, drumbeating, and enemy slagging. Down there were memes show Trump card as a courageous lead, supporting for his pledges to expel illicit migrant, and canned biographies description the applicant as same really determination of the successful history. It was barely balanced material, but nor did lot of it classify as counterfeit news story. But pundits scramble to explanation the upheaval outcome, or in lot cases, their own follies, rotated to counterfeit news story as one probable explain. But to say how CEO Trump card was the at first political figure to expand the period would himself be, so, counterfeit news story. On December 8, 2016, Hillary Clinton done a speaking in that she aforementioned same plague of malevolent counterfeit news story and erroneous promotion how submerged public print above the history year. He's now precise how as called counterfeit news story can include actual world ensuing consequences, she told. The isn't on policy or adherence. Lives are at hazard, lives of common human beings fare hard to go on their days, to do their jobs, promote to their communities. But in how speaking, Clinton as well requested her auditorium to assist defend our democratic state. Some reporters interpreted how more than widely as a link to the poll. Counterfeit news story, a full policy hag search. How signaled to the lot human beings out down there who were support Trump card and fleeing websites supporting of him, how he was proverb okay, we're departure to get the period and do it's, Silverman says. The counterfeit news story equine had not fair bolted of the steady, it was off and fleeing. But during months the steep universality of the sentence counterfeit news story had maybe rendered the period pointless. All kinds of things, disinformation, rotation, plot theories, mistakes, and accountability, how human beings fare dong-tie love, include been rolling in it. We did the to ourselves, and by we, I indicate the print, says Alexios Mansarlis, CEO of the Pointer Institution's World Reality Checking Web. Law following the poll, in editorials, in news story articles, we begun inviting counterfeit news story a bit of all. We should be deliberate how our production is partially to accuse for the mess we're on. And several expert in enormous expertise in the box include begun to behind off of the counterfeit news story flame generally. The is a very facility issue, she says. If we're departure to begin thought of ways we can stand up, we're departure to include precise terminology. Wardle says how and possession in the sentence, or affirmative, the history confessedly might be a portion of how, is in fact suffering the trust of differently plausible news story point of sale. My anxiety now is the type of accountability we see on misinformation, says Claire Wardle. Human beings are proverb, I don't aware who to trust or who to confidence, all's break. My anxiety is the way how we're speaking on several of these issues is in fact making more than rather than the unique disinformation did in the at first location. Mance Arliss says how time same's worried on tongue crawl, he isn't prepared to leave it generally, though he would love to see counterfeit news story confined to descriptions of spammy done-up stories destruction Facebook news story feeds. Fair since who else is with the period to indicate thing various doesn't indicate it loses its importance, he says. If who starts inviting a phone a plantain, and has a really big megaphone, doesn't indicate how the otherwise of us should halt inviting a phone. Obviously the enabler of the contemporary shape of counterfeit news story, or, if you love, disinformation, has been the blasting increase of public print. Down there are a lot more than human beings now operating as reality checking and hard to pure all the ovens, but he's at a scope now how we fair can't hold upwards. So which to do on it? Reality checking plant, says Alexios Mance Arliss, but automatic solutions are perhaps not the reply. We're been announcing robot reality check for on 20 year and we're anywhere close he says. Which we can do is assist humans and journalists discover fish claims more rapid, and get accessing to the statistics how they requirement to check a complaint more rapid. I see an huge capacity in technique as an aid and turbo of reality checking, he says. I see really slight use in technique as a size-fits-all versatile fixative of the issue. Which we've seen above the history 2 year is how sequentially, through the executive board, independently of adherents, while human beings get said a lie and get introduced in a adjustment, their faith in the lie goes downward, he says. Human beings might be reality persistent, but really few are reality immunity, he says. In the period, counterfeit news story might go to be seen as a heirloom of a feverish 2017, if we're happy. But the struggle versus disinformation wind go off. Companies and governments are now start to get specific activity, the ensuing consequences of that will be thick felt for several period. Google and Facebook include both of told how they are departure to be employing a lot of human beings to overview substance and force their regulation of facility and hold counterfeit and illicit material off their plate. I'm concerned to see how is in fact made, BuzzFeed's Silverman says. Same opacity of these platforms and their force and the reality how so lot speaking has excited on to them is thing how we requirement to pay focus to and do certainly how we don't rotate them of places wherever disinformation is fleeing wild to places how are so blocked downward how they are breaking speaking, he says. Near trouble on the force of the public print companies, the expert as well include concerns on the force of governments. Occasionally so intentioned but bad-informed legislative assembly will outsmart and do more than damage how the issue they are hard to install, in law on counterfeit news story, Mance Arliss says, noted how law is creature offered in few countries through Europe. And for virus policy lyrics news stories, down there are new frontiers that reality checkers are hard to deepen in. I very believe we requirement to be thought of video sequence more than video sequence are really strong vehicles of misinformation, Claire Wardle says. Frequently photos are traveling in fast rate on close exchanging messages apps such as WhatsApp or Viber. And time the debate on counterfeit news story has concentrated on the Western, a lot of disinformation love the is circulatory on public health, religious and community external of the US, in evolving countries. Same force of thing love WhatsApp is how he's traveling among really shut networks of peers who are lot more than potential to confidence every some, Wardle says. Down there's one significant issue, which effect does disinformation very include in the minds of voters? Always with the discussion above the question very took off a slight above a year back, down there's been huge discrepancy as to if erroneous stories distribution on the internet in fact include any effect on human beings' policy or vote patterns. But the researchers as well found how the visits were very concentration, 10% of readers done 60% of the visits. And critically, the researchers signed counterfeit news story does not mob out difficult news story intake. Same achieve was comparatively broad, but not so profound, Mansarla says. He's rather a big move future to tell, our human beings vote on the manufacturing decisions on he. To say he's poison our democratic state or it won the guy or the some guy and poll, we requirement a lot more than study to be capable to say how.